So today with my Dharma talk, I'm going to continue with a series that I've been doing over the last few months based on a Zen teaching poem called The Identity of Relative and Absolute. So several of you haven't been here for this stretch. And just to give you a little bit of a background on this poem, I'm just using it as kind of a launching off point. I take a couple of lines each time and use them as a launching off point for some what I hope are relevant and helpful appreciations of the Dharma in this group. So this poem speaks to a deep Dharma of these two realms of existence that we all experience, the relative realm and the absolute realm. Okay, we all have some understanding of these realms. The relative realm is that in which we're separate from others. We have certain qualities, others have other qualities. High and low are meaningful distinctions, rich and poor are meaningful distinctions, things like this. And then the absolute realm, where the unity of beings, the unity of qualities, the unity of extremes is really the more meaningful appreciation. Right? This poem talks about these realms being identical. So it's some deep Dharma here, and it points us to the fruits of Zen practice, of Zazen practice, that we can actually not only understand this unity, but really bring it alive in our own lives. So last week, I focused on the lines, within light there is darkness, but do not try to understand that darkness. Within darkness there is light, but do not look for that light. Okay. So the light is the relative world. It's where we see clear distinctions amongst things. And the darkness is a term for the absolute. Everything is unified within that darkness. And the poem says, within the light, within the relative, there is that unity, but it's not something you can look for. And within the unity, there is distinction, but it's not something that you can understand with your conceptual mind. So in our practice, oftentimes we're drawn at the beginning to really have an experience of the absolute. We're very familiar with the relative world, our limitations and our comparative natures, feeling a certain state condition and wanting it to be another state condition, and really experience the relative gap between those two state conditions. And we really want to abide in this absolute place of oneness, right? Now, as an idea, the idea of the absolute is not the experience of the absolute. And we know this, from the beginning, right? We've heard this from the beginning. So with good training, we're led to practice bringing this alive, bringing the absolute alive in our lives. And we can have experiences of the absolute. Even in early days of our practice, we can have strong experiences of feeling unified with the universe, really being one with the sound of traffic, being one with the bird song. No distinction between me and you. But without cultivating the mind of Zazen, even the experience of the absolute remains an experience, and it comes back and becomes a relative experience. Okay. So the process of bringing alive this identity is something that really takes time. I don't know of anybody, and I haven't even heard of anybody who has, fully inhabited this identity, from the get-go. For most of us, we have so much karmic conditioning to bring to light that it takes time, years, usually, almost always, to bring this living identity alive in our lives. So the next two lines talk a little bit about what the feeling of this identity is. So I want to appreciate that. Okay. Light and darkness are a pair, like the foot before and the foot behind in walking. That's it. Light and darkness are a pair, like the foot before and the foot behind in walking. So we have a nice simile here, like the foot before and the foot behind in walking. And there's a lot of richness in this simile. So that's what I want to spend this talk appreciating. Light and dark, the relative and the absolute, the subjective and the objective spheres, the personal and the impersonal, or the more than personal, like I was alluding to at the beginning. Okay, these are the spheres. So how do they interpenetrate? How do they interplay? So in feet that are walking, we have this quality of balance. Okay. We have a quality of movement. We have a quality of dependency or complementarity of the different feet. Right? All of these are kind of embedded within this simile of the walking, 2 feet walking. Right? So let's appreciate it even more. The complementarity, right? We need both. We need 2 feet to walk. You only got 1 foot, you're hopping at best. But this is really steady, balanced walking. So Suzuki Roshi, in his commentary on this part of this poem, said, teaching and learning go hand in hand in this way. You can't just be a teacher or a student. It's impossible. You can't have just the relative or the absolute. He said, if you think you're always a student, you can't learn anything. The reason you learn something is in order to teach others after you have learned it. So right now, in this moment, if you think you're just a student, then you're not learning anything. Likewise, if you think you're just a teacher, then you're not teaching anything. And you're certainly not learning anything. Right. Master Joshu, after he was well realized and practiced with his teacher Nansen for many years, at the age of, I always forget whether it's 60 or 80 when he sent out. I know he died at 120, but he said, if I can teach someone who's 80, oh yeah, he was 60. And he said, if I come across someone and they're 80 years old and I can teach them, I'll teach them. If I come across someone who's 12 years old who can teach me, I'll learn from them. That's the spirit of a true teacher, is to enter into that teaching role, not being defined by teacher, but being fully absorbed in the teaching, learning dynamic, moment by moment. When I first took on the role of teacher, I didn't have this so integrated for me. It was, okay, I was a student, now I'm a teacher, now I've got to become a good teacher. But I've come to realize that my mind always has to be just learning. And if my orientation is more about learning as well as teaching, then both of them are really alive. And that's alive for me now. I like putting together these Dharma talks because I learn much from them. So this relationship is dynamic. Right? The unity of the relative and the absolute, the identity of the personal and the impersonal. It's in the dynamism. Okay? You can't say this equals that. It's not like that. It's not static like that. It's in this dynamism. That's why it's in walking. like the foot before and the foot behind in walking. It's like a dynamic interplay of active and passive. A few weeks ago, when I was talking about one of the other couplets, I said it's like a flipped coin. Okay? It's not like a static coin, two sides of one coin, where we go, oh, there's the absolute, and no, there's the relative. There's the personal, oh, and there's the impersonal. It's not like that. It's like that. Can you pick it out? Yeah. Can you pick out heads or tails in that dynamic functioning? I don't think so. So that's what it is. So our practice of shikantaza, we call just sitting, but it's also translated as only dynamic sitting. Shikan, only, exclusively. Ta, dynamic. Za, sitting. That's what our shikantaza is. It's very dynamic. One of the translations of that ta is active, but I didn't want to say active because I just said that I'm not talking about active and passive. So I'm gonna name this as dynamic, which includes both active and passive. Another translation of the ta is hitting exactly the right spot. Hitting exactly the right spot. This has this quality too. There's the hitting, and then there's the spot. Not one atom off, precise and dynamic. These are the qualities that we really want to practice cultivating in our zazen. This precision, this dynamism. And when you take care of your practice in this way, then it will take care of you. It might seem, perhaps, especially if you're new, odd for me to be talking about this dynamism in this really still form that we adopt in Zazen. Why do we sit still so much if we want to bring this dynamic relationship alive? And it's a good question. It is a good question. In fact, my partner, Miyoku, she's a conscious movement teacher. So her practice is much more physically dynamic than ours is. And sometimes she says, why are you sitting so much? I think you sit too much. To which, of course, I go back and I say, I don't think you sit enough. And, of course, I'm right. In this moment, I'm right. Maybe tomorrow she'll be right. Now I'm wrong. Yeah, but I don't think we sit too much. No, because this dynamic interplay that I'm talking about, it's very subtle. It is, it's very subtle. It can take years of practice to really see the truth of this interplay. And you do see it. You do start to see it. And you see it fully. These are alive right now at the same time. So because it's so subtle, we can lose it in physical activity. We can get an agitation going in the body. The nervous system is starting to handle a lot of stimuli in that physical activity, and we lose the subtlety of the dynamic interplay that is the real manifestation of the unity. Okay, so that's where the stillness comes in. Is to really give us the stabilization, the equanimity, the container, to really feel and see this subtle dynamic interplay. And your practice has to be alive with this subtle dynamic interplay. Okay? Don't be sleepy. Don't be collapsed. Okay? Be really attentive and be very vigilant of falling into that. Your zazen should be vibrant and alive. Ryushin Sensei and I, just before this meeting earlier today, were talking about these different qualities of relaxation that we can enter into, and he was sharing, a real insight into how we, in this culture, and maybe as humans, but in this culture, we associate relaxation with sleepiness. And maybe that's because we're all amped up a lot all the time. So like relaxation has this connotation of sleepiness, or an association with it at least. So as we relax, we start to go into sleep. But there is the relaxation, which is also the field of a contentness, a contentment, and a wakefulness. That relaxation. And that's the quality of relaxation that we cultivate in our zazen. Okay? So from that contented and wakeful relaxation, then the subtlety of this dynamic interplay of these realms can come alive for you. We have to resist the temptation to try to pin these things down. Okay, there's another appreciation around these realms coming through from this metaphor of the walking, 1 foot. It's like 1 foot before and 1 foot after. Don't pin it down as saying this is relative and this is absolute. Right? This is subjective and this is objective. This is personal and this is impersonal. Okay? We have a tendency to do that in order to understand it, perhaps, or to appreciate it, or just to label it. But we have to resist the temptation of doing that with these realms, because actually they're always present. So I can say nothing is exclusively relative and absolute, and I'll also say nothing is exclusively personal and impersonal. So relating it to what I spoke about before, making your practice too personal. If you're making it too personal, you're actually missing a whole dimension of the reality of what's going on with your practice. It's also more than personal. You undoubtedly have an effect on the more than you, on the group, on society, on the collective, on the world right now, whether you're aware of it or not. So this tendency to try to pin things down, this is subject, this is objective, this is personal, this is impersonal. Oh, I'm going through all this and this is all about me and not about you, whatever it might be, like that, it impedes, it inhibits the real functioning. It's kind of like you're walking and you're like a left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. If you're wrapped up in that, pretty soon you're going to be running into something or just getting exhausted, or whatever. You're not going to be free flowing. Right? Shishin Roshi used to tell a story of I think it's just a teaching story. Actually, I don't know if it actually happened, but the tale is of a fellow who had a really long beard, down to his knees. And somebody asked him once, when you go to bed, do you put your beard over the sheets or under the sheets? And he couldn't answer. So when he went to bed that night, he watched himself and he put it over the sheets. But that didn't feel right. So he put it under the sheets and that didn't feel right. He put it over the sheets, and he couldn't get to sleep because he got all up in his head about it. Do you know which foot you put into your trousers first? Yeah, which one? Okay. Does anybody else know for sure? Okay, some of you know. Does everybody know? No. Okay, some knows. All right. If you don't know, try to answer it the next time. You know, I mean, you're all up in your head now, right? It's like I got you spinning. Try to put your pants on. I think you'll be able to put your pants on. Yeah, falling asleep's a little more subtle. So it's kind of the same thing with our relationship to our thinking mind in our zazen, right? You know, get into thinking. Oh, there's thinking. Oh yeah, no, but I want not thinking. Okay, there's not thinking. Yeah, there's not thinking. Ah, God, that's not it. That's not it. Okay. Flipped coin. Thinking, not thinking, thinking, not thinking. All together, all one. Can you experience it as one? So is the foot in front better than the front foot in back? Is one foot better than the other? No, of course not, right? You know, but sometimes we might think they are. Maybe we think the absolute's better than the relative. Yeah, but the front foot turns into the back foot. The back foot turns into the front foot. Absolute turns into the relative. Relative turns into the absolute. Okay. The foot doesn't change. It's not like the toe goes to the other side of the foot. Suddenly it's a left foot. No, now it's back, now it's front. But they've got different roles, right? Different functions within that walking, right? Even within the walking, right? It's like the back foot's providing the thrust and the front foot is providing the guidance. Okay, that's where I'm going, right? They actually have different functions. So that's kind of like teacher and student or host and guest. Okay, working with that kind of way. Different function, different role. We'll talk more about that next week when we talk about form and position. Yeah. This complementary relationship is very dynamic and it's very, very precise. And the functioning is very beautifully interconnected in order to allow, you know, a free flowing functioning as one. So last thing is just to appreciate the main mantra of my teacher, Shishin Roshi, which many of you know. But he'd always say, just keep going. Just keep going. Just keep walking. One foot in front of the other. With the dynamic interplay of all the dimensions of your being. All the dimensions of your being, the personal and the more than personal, the subjective and the objective, self and other. Don't leave any of it out. That's what just keep going means. If you leave any of it out, then you're starting to slow down and you're starting to wobble. Don't leave any of it out. One step, one step, one step, one step. Never stop. Never stop. Every moment, every situation, every relationship, every choice. Always bring your full self to bear. When you're just keeping going, right? When you apply your consciousness in this way, just keep going. You don't pin yourself down and nobody else can pin you down. No person can pin you down. Society can't pin you down. Culture can't pin you down. You keep going. You keep moving forward. No one can slow you down. No one can trap you. And they may try. People do try. Society tries. Culture tries. Certain groups try. They want to pin you down. But if you keep this mentality and keep this practice of keep going with your presence, then you're already gone. Their effort to pin you down and you're already gone. Oh, what's happening now? What's happening now? What's happening now? Oh, I see what happened there. I see what you tried. That's not me. I'm being a little general here because this is a whole rich area that we can get into. But this is just keep going. Okay? It's not just gutting out your practice and slogging through a sit every day. No, that's not just keep going. Just keep going is one step at a time with dynamism and balance and joy and vigor and presence and heart. And then you'll experience this unified reality, big self. You'll experience it as yourself. What was once very subtle is now not so elusive, but alive for you. And in that big self, you've lost your small self. You've lost it in the interplay. You've lost it in the dance. It's still there, but it's fully absorbed in the dance. So you keep going until you're gone. And then you still keep going. Okay, that's it.